Hello and welcome to the inaugural meeting of the course Contextualized Computing and Ambient Intelligent Systems in the summer term 2021. First some remarks in German. Diese Vorlesung ist auch Teil von englischsprachigen Studienprogrammen an der Uni. Der Rest dieser Veranstaltung heute ist daher auch auf Englisch. Die Regularien, Formalia etc. sind aber eigentlich identisch zum gleichzeitig angebotenen Kurs Contextual Design of Interactive Systems. Das heißt, ihr könnt euch gerne auch das entsprechende Vorlesungsvideo dazu anschauen und dann einfach nur für die inhaltlichen Dinge zum Ambient Systems und zu Kontext wieder zu diesem Video zurückkehren. Das Video zu dem anderen Kurs findet sich auf dem YouTube-Kanal der Medieninformatik und ist entsprechend auch im LearnWeb-Kurs für das Kontextdesign verlinkt. Was so die weitere Wahl der Sprache angeht, ihr habt die Möglichkeit, Prüfungsaufgaben etc. auch auf Deutsch zu beantworten. Das ist überhaupt kein Problem. Materialien werden sowieso auch teilweise auf Englisch sein. Wir werden ein paar Paper lesen etc. und die sind sowieso auf Englisch. Inwieweit wir dann in irgendwelchen Kurssprechstunden Deutsch oder Englisch sprechen, inwieweit vielleicht weitere Videos auf Deutsch oder Englisch gemacht werden. Das hängt so ein bisschen davon ab, wie sich die Zusammensetzung des Kurses verändert, inwieweit wir tatsächlich Studierende haben, die aus englischsprachigen Studienprogrammen kommen oder nicht. Wenn das nicht der Fall ist, kann ich auch selbstverständlich wieder auf Deutsch wechseln. Aber wie gesagt, einige Inhalte werden auf jeden Fall auf Englisch sein. Paper müsste man auf Englisch lesen etc. Ansonsten sind und was aber eure eigenen Arbeiten angeht, seid ihr in der Wahl der Sprache freigestellt. Freigestellt soweit, dass ich natürlich die Sprache irgendwie zumindest verstehen muss, in der ihr eure Übungsaufgaben abgebt, eure Prüfungsaufgaben abgebt. Okay, let's continue in English then, and let's start with some contact information. My name is Jörg Kassens. I'm with the Institute für Informatik. I usually have a telephone number. You can reach me as well, but the problem is that I was supposed to get a new number on the 1st of April and something went wrong. So the old number is still not deactivated, so I hope that will be sorted out soon. Then I can update my contact data with my telephone data, and you will find the contact details then in LSF as well when you search for me. I have an office, but I haven't seen my office for quite a while. As you are aware, there is something going on which prevents us from going into work a little bit. So my office hours will also be online in the same system in Big Blue Button, and I do it in a way that you reserve a slot in the office hours by going to the URL seen on screen, mi.krivi.de/meet. There is no slot available right now because the first 2 weeks of term are a bit crazy this time. There's a lot of stuff going on, not only related to teaching, so we will start having office hours at the week following the 26th. So from the 26th, which is basically in 1.5 weeks from now, then you can reserve slots for office hour meetings. Just one thing which is concerning the German only in a way, I usually use first names when I talk to students, and you can do the same. So I'm Jörg, which is usual in English, but not that usual in German. So if you have any problems with that and would prefer to be addressed by your last name, please tell me. Then I will try to remember that. Else I will just say Michael, for example, and Michael can say Jörg. You can say du to me. You can say you to me, right? That's okay. So that's about me. let's dive into the rules and regulations for this particular course. Those of you who have been to the introduction into the contextual design of interactive systems course yesterday, a lot of the contents I will talk about today is very similar, because the way I do these two courses is very similar. How I plan to run them is very similar, so you can also just look at the video for yesterday's course if you are inclined to do so and don't like being in synchronous big blue button meetings, and just wait for the recording of today's session to be online. It will be online on YouTube, and it will be linked to from LearnWeb, as is the case for the other course. And then just skip to the parts where I actually talk about the ambient and contextualized systems. So you're free to do so. The course meetings here, just to get that out of the way quickly, is mostly for coordination and questions, and not necessarily the main means of content delivery. Okay, so what's the workload for this kind of course? It's 3 hours per week course, and it comes with 5 credit points. And 1 credit point in our system is worth 25 to 30 hours in Germany of work. And for the informatics, computer science lines of studies, this is actually set to 25 hours. So when we say we have 5 credit points for a course, it's very easy to calculate how much work is expected for that amount of credits. So that's 125 hours in total. Or if you do this course solely during term time, that would be about 8 hours per week. One calculates 14 weeks of term time, which is roughly what we also have this term, depending on how you look at the break around Pentecost. This course can be used in different study programs. As I said, data analytics is one of them, in the area elective applications media systems. For IMIT, angewandte Informatik, it's Wahlmodule Informatik, Gebietinformatik. For Wirtschaftsinformatik, it's Spezialisierung und Vertiefungsmodule, Business Intelligence. Warum habe ich jetzt da Unternehmensmodellierung? Ach so, genau, Business Intelligence. Ich weiß jetzt nicht, warum das hier durchgestrichen ist, muss ich nachher nochmal gucken. Maßgabe ist immer das, was im Modulhandbuch steht, beziehungsweise wie eure Prüfungsordnungen das sehen. Andere Studiengänge, das ist Maßgabe des zuständigen Prüfungsausschusses, da muss man gegebenenfalls dann mal mit mir reden. So that's how you can use this course in the different study programs. Now, when you look at LSF, this course has a bit of a weird time slot allocated. It starts either at 9 o'clock or at 10 o'clock on Wednesdays, and it lasts to 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock. This confusion is based on the fact that, or is rooted in the fact that we recently had to rearrange time slots for the courses in media informatics, and we're still not sure what it will lead to the least collisions. So we are a bit deliberately a bit open for suggestions on to move this course a bit, but of course this is not that useful for mostly asynchronous courses, as this will be anyway. So we will have a course office hour like this today within these time slots, and I settled on Wednesdays at 10 o'clock as today. So starting today, 10 o'clock CT, so which means basically 10:15, we will have course office hours here, where we can, in this big blue button room, where we can talk about the course problems occurring. You can make comments or remarks about the course, etc. These course meetings are non-compulsory, since hopefully most of the work can be done in a asynchronous fashion. You can of course use these time slots, mark them in your calendar and say that's where I want to work on ambient intelligent systems. So you have a given time slot where you can actually focus on this kind of course, and drop into the course office hours if need be. I'm always open for suggestions on how to increase interactivity. This kind of course delivery is not very it's not something we enjoy particularly either. So just sitting in front of a camera and looking into a camera and talking, and maybe sometimes seeing a question popping up in big blue button is not my preferred way of teaching either. So if you, during the course of the course, come over some things where you say, oh, we should do this in a more interactive session, we should have a meeting on this particular topic, or we need to do this in LearnWeb forum threads or whatever, then please do so. Please come forward and discuss these things. In a normal course, the ratio about the lecture and the tutorial would be about 2:1, meaning I talk for 2 hours and you talk for 1 hour, basically. But online courses are very different. The way you work with material is very different. You when you watch a lecture video, you probably don't watch it in one go. At least that's how I understand the data I see on using the videos. I don't get any personalized data or something, so don't worry. I cannot see whether you are actually watching this particular video. But I see engagement in an aggregated way, and usually it's people don't watch videos in one go. People only watch parts of videos anyway, and research also suggests that if students are working with online material, there's a lot of pausing, rewinding going on. So which also means that like if we have, let's say if we have 2 hours of lecture per week, I can't directly translate that into talking into a camera for 2 hours and expect you to watch the video in 2 hours, because you will work with the material in a different way. As I said, I'm missing the cues I usually get when I do a face-to-face lecture where people are staring at me with blank eyes, and I know, okay, I'm talking in a way where I'm not understood anymore. I'm too fast, or I'm too slow. I see that people get tired, and that we have to open the windows maybe for a bit and do something else just to get our minds back on track. All this stuff is not working in this kind of lectures. When I do a lecture video, I usually will edit it afterwards and take out parts where I get on a tangent or whatever. That also doesn't happen in a face-to-face meeting. So the videos basically are denser than the presentation would be in a normal course. So all this adds up to that we can't just say, okay, we do 2 hours of video every week, and you you watch 2 hours of video, and then we are actually at the same page as we would be in a face-to-face meeting. In addition, basically I have 3 different courses, more on special topics within media informatics, and I usually do have required readings, meaning that you have some text you will read for a specific week, and we will discuss this text in class. And how do you translate that into an online format? So we will discuss that a bit later. But all this adds up to that this strict hours do not really work for this kind of course, in my opinion. Whatever you do when you work with content material is to try to keep active learning in mind, which means that it's not only about watching a video, it's not only about reading a paper, it's kind of really work with the material in a way. And what I would do in a face-to-face meeting is the dreaded group work assignments, where during the tutorials I say, okay, just let's talk about this particular question in different groups here. This is very difficult to actually save into an online format in that sense, in the same way. But you should keep in mind that this is only one way of actively working with content. So, and I would really encourage you to, if you work with material, if you read a text or watch a video from at least certain linguistic perspectives, a video is as much a text as a written text is, then work actively with the text, take notes, annotate the content while you work with it, do excerpts. All these also help you to prepare for the exams in a way, and help you understand the stuff better. So that you get really a bird's eye view of the whole content, and see how different aspects might be related to each other. In tutorials we usually have something like assignments and deliverables. In my courses I don't do mandatory deliverables which you have to do in order to be allowed to pass to take the exams, for example. I don't really believe in that kind of things. It's more about, the tutorials are more about giving you the opportunity for peer-to-peer learning, where people can start talking about their own work and can say how they have solved different things. We will try to save that in a way by doing discussions in LearnWeb. And again, this is more about the tutorials are more about peer-to-peer learning. It's more about that we together and you together in for example also in study groups learn on for different topics. We can't really do group works. I mean, you are free to meet in groups to work with the content, of course. But it's very hard to do this in an online session, in particular if I, as I said, do prefer to have asynchronous content delivery. Practical assignments are anyway kind of difficult in this kind of course, but there will be some things which we will be doing, and these kind of practical assignments will more lean towards visions for different areas or scenarios on how different things can unfold. The exam, one of the most important questions in every course, I am afraid. This will be a kind of a portfolio type exam, where at the end of the lecture time I will publish a booklet with some exam tasks. And you have at least 4 weeks to work on this task. So depending on how early I'm able to publish the this booklet with assignments. You will be able to work with this material till the end of September. So the delivery time for your solution is end of September, and you have 4 weeks at least. And if you remember what I talked about when I talked about course load, 125 hours of course load for this lecture, then that actually means that even if you would not have worked on this course at all during term time, which I strongly suggest you do if you want to work with this context, because as I said, I would like to have some discussions in LearnWeb, for example. Even if you don't really focus on this course at all during term time, 225 hours equals about 3.5 weeks of full-time work. So you can you will definitely be able to work through the task for this booklet at the right before delivery. I have been asked before whether I can actually make this booklet available while we are going forward. However, I find it very difficult to do so, because I want to be sure that this booklet is not extensively long or extensively difficult to prepare for, and I still don't know how this course will develop, what we will be talking about during the course, because I'm very much open for suggestions on what content you really would like to focus on, where we should dive into a bit more detail, and what maybe other parts which we don't want to dive into in that detail. So it's very hard to actually know how to make sure that you get a assignment booklet which can actually be dealt with in a good fashion when doing it incrementally. So that's why I opted to have this booklet with some exam tasks available at the end of the course. Now, I said that hopefully we will have some interaction during the course as well. We will be able to do some course content in the form of and shape of LearnWeb discussions. But and you can use whatever you do during the time, hopefully, in order to be better prepared for the exam task, or it might even be that you can directly connect it to stuff you have done so before. Handing in is electronically via LearnWeb, so you will get the option to upload a zip file or a PDF file with the necessary with the solutions, including other media if necessary, and you can either work on it handwriting and then scanning it, taking a photo which is of sufficient quality. You can use text processors, you can use LaTeX, and templates for that will also be made available. I said before that I'm very much interested in your feedback on how this course progresses, where are problems, what's working, what is not working. That's something I'm always appreciative of. In particular, in the sense that if you decide this course is not for you, and you just leave, you leave. I would be interested on why you are leaving, so to say. One thing is that yes, this I just have too much to do. I usually subscribe to more courses than I can deliver, and I just take 2 to 3 weeks to see how it's going to develop, and then I cut courses, and yours is not making the cut, and or parenting is taking a higher toll than I expected, and my kid needs me more, or whatever reason. That's a very different reason for not continuing with the course, and let's say, or the delivery is bad, or the content is bad, or your your way of running the course is bad, or your teaching style is bad. So if you leave the course, I would appreciate if you just drop me a short message anyway, to say, okay, I'm leaving the course because of this reason, because only when I get feedback on my teaching, I can actually improve things. And I know that there are lots of things I should I should improve when it comes to teaching. I know that there are some things where I'm not necessarily which students necessarily like. So, and hopefully there are some which they do like. But so we all need to improve our teaching, and this kind of feedback is very important. And as I said, part of the path will be developing while we move forward. So, for example, how much weight will be given to certain topics regarding comparing to other topics. That's something we have to negotiate during the course anyway. Just a short reminder of all the different courses we are doing in media informatics. We are in summer term, and in summer term we have basically always the lab course, the practical media informatic, which is actually starting today as well at 2 o'clock. And we have a set of 3 different courses, Spezialvorlesungen, which focus on different aspects of media informatics. And in every given summer term, I do 2 out of these 3 courses. This time we are doing this course here, Contextualized Computing and Ambient Intelligent Systems, Wednesdays at 10 o'clock with the course office hours, and we have the Contextual Design of Interactive Systems in Tuesdays at 10 o'clock. This time in German, it looks like, because nobody signed up for it, who was more interested in an English version. The course which I'm not giving this year is Data and Process Visualization. This course has been run for the last 2 years and will be available again in next summer term. Now, during the winter term, just a short outlook at what's going on in October. There's the Kernvorlesung, Medieninformatik, the main course, preparatory course for media informatics, which is in German, definitely in German. Then there is the seminar for media informatics for those who have done maybe another course before in this area, can join the seminar. And there's also a German course, Informatik und Gesellschaft, which is actually part of the mandatory study program for the teacher education we have. And yeah, that will be so we look at societal issues, how it does not only how does fake news how does fake news get generated, how does it get distributed, etc. How do deep fakes work? What are the issues with deep fakes? But also things like so more ethical stuff, but also more regulatory stuff is how do we work with different copyright regimes? What does it mean for us, for example? So that's as an interlude, just the other courses in media informatics. If you find out that this course is not the right one for you, maybe one of the other courses is more suitable. Okay, so next part about the topic. Now we basically, one starting point we can have is the learning goals as defined in the lecture in the course catalog. In the course catalog, we try to describe what we want to do in the course, and it's always a good it's always good to sometimes check whether what we wrote for the course catalog is actually what we are doing in the different courses, which admittedly is sometimes just diverging in a way. So what we want to do, according to the course catalog, in this module, students learn to know different principles, methods, and processes for the development of contextualized and ambient intelligence systems. Contextualized applications take context parameters such as location, time, person's presence into account. Ambient intelligence systems are ubiquitous and pervasive and become part of the environment. Starting from cognitive and semiotic principles, it is discussed how contextual parameters can be analyzed and modeled. Different methods and tools for context reasoning are examined. Furthermore, challenges for the development of ambient systems are outlined and technologies for their implementation presented. Now that's quite a mouthful, so let's break that down a little bit. So we always look at have something akin to principles, methods, and processes when it comes to media informatics courses, which basically means that we want to integrate both theoretical standpoints, more like theories, principles, and we want to break that down into something which can be applied. So how can we actually work from this theoretic principles, not necessarily first principles, from the theoretic principles when we are actually moving towards a systems building perspective, because informatics as a engineering discipline, at the end of the day, we want to have some kind of artifact. We want to somehow change the world, hopefully for the better. So we also need some processes on how to do that, standards, good practices, and we need to employ different methods of doing that. So that's something which is basically we have to always look at: is there some theory we can build on? Is there some methods, some processes we can employ for actually changing the world? And then we now have the two different aspects which are part of the course title. First, contextualized applications. So that's what I said before. Context is something which makes us able to deal with different situations. If you would regard every situation you come across as something new, it would be very hard for you to survive in the world in a way, at least in the same fashion as everything which you encounter is new in a way. So you have certain expectations when you come into a lecture. So in a lecture, it's expected that I'm not starting to sing Klingon opera. That's just not something which is done, at least in computer science courses. It is expected that there is some kind of teaching relationship. If you go shopping, there is a certain expectations of that you first grab your stuff and then pay. You don't pay up front and then can get as much stuff as you have paid for, but there's a certain script which you run through when you go shopping. So all this is context. Context is a very difficult concept in itself, but the first basic understanding of context is what makes a situation groupable in similar sets of solutions, and which makes it possible to understand how to react in a certain situation. So in a way, what we do, our behavior, both constructs the context by just sitting here and talking into a camera and a microphone in a specific way, constructs the context of being in a lecture. So I make this a lecture, but on the same at the same time that I am in this kind of specific situation where we are in Big Blue Button. All of you have the cameras turned off, and I'm the only one with the camera on. That's giving the space for me to do that. Or another example. So if we have face-to-face meetings, face-to-face lectures, the architecture itself already gives a context or favors specific context. So a lecture theater is always organized in a way that there's a lectern up front where the teacher is standing and giving the lecture, and all the students are facing the lecturer. And well, they can hide behind their computers and read Insta or whatever, but oh well, probably more on the phone. But the architecture already sets a specific favors specific instances of interaction. And if we, for example, do a lecture in a very different setting, like here on Big Blue Button, I have to do much more semiotic work. What that means, we hopefully find out later. I have to do much more work in order to make this into a lecture than I would do in a normal classroom, so to say. So context is something which both restricts what we can do, but also what we or favors specific behaviors, but also what we do makes certain context comes true. So if you, for example, decide to go to a specific space at a beach and start playing beach volleyball, then you are constructing the context of the game at that moment. And ambient intelligence now takes these concepts and adds and a contextualized application is something which will be able to deal with these different kind of situations. And ambient intelligence is now the idea that we not only do we have computer systems which identify this different contexts people can be in, but we also react in a specific way to enhance the situation. So a lecture theater can configure itself for a lecture, or a room at the university can configure itself for either a lecture or group works. Lights can be dimmed, lights can be made brighter, screens can be deployed, etc. I once had a student who said, well, we should have rooms where the floor is movable, and actually when you come into and we want to have lectures, and then parts of the floor become chairs and other parts become tables, and they all face the same directions. And if we want to have a group work instead, then we are not facing the same direction, but we're facing each other. So that would be the ambience part. And the important aspect here with ambient parts is that they become part of the environment, that they disappear into the environment. So we, in contrast to classical computer systems where we have an explicit input, we move the mouse, we type on the keyboard, we touch certain parts of the screen, etc. And our interaction with an ambient system becomes more implicit. That I am in a specific room at a certain time means that I'm giving a lecture in a certain room, that I'm having a coffee mug with me makes a certain encounter of people, a meeting. That I have a white pen in my hand means that I'm a whiteboard marker in my hand means that I want to draw on a whiteboard. So the idea behind ambient intelligence systems is similar names are ubiquitous computing, pervasive computing, similar but not quite identical concepts. And we will look at how can we make these kind of systems work, and in particular, and of course it is a challenge to see it's a human-computer interaction, because that's a very different human-computer interaction than what you learn in a traditional HDI maybe. And in media informatics is in itself a very transdisciplinary, interdisciplinary discipline, so with lots of links to other areas. So of course within computer science, there are strong links to human-computer interaction. There are strong links to media technology, but there are strong links to artificial intelligence in the sense that how can this actually work? How can an interface adopt itself to different users? So this is already part of media informatics in basically every course. But it also has a lot of connections to other disciplines. So I talked about semiotic principles before. Semiotics, science of sense making. So how does meaning get transferred from one person to the other? That's an important aspect here. When I talked about architecture, that's a semiotic process. That the architecture brings you into the mood, into the expectations of following a lecture. That's a semiotic process in itself. There are cognitive processes that work. So how do we understand the world? What are the different cognitive functions which are important here, etc. So we will try to draw that in as well. These kind of systems are offer themselves for more arts related approach. So you can there's a connection to the arts, like can we build systems which react to people in a specific way? So for example, when the new science is building at the Norwegian Technology University for Science and Technology was built, they actually incorporated sensors into the hallways, and not always, but at specific times with a random factor, the building would sense how many people are in the building, how many people are moving in different corridors, and would play very soft, very low music, abstract music. And actually this was not widely communicated, so people would not even notice that their behavior in the building would make the building make some music, which make the building make some sounds. But it was a very interesting experience. So the building would adopt itself, would become a musical instrument, and every occupant of that building would be part of playing that instrument by moving in corridors. So these kind of technologies, of course, have a very definite relation to arts, and that's also something which can be interesting to examine. Building these kind of systems is very hard in the sense that it's a huge effort to really put them into being. If you build a new university building and put sensors everywhere, that's a huge part. For example, also from a monetary perspective. So how can we develop systems and actually make sure that they work? How can we make sure that this not only in the sense of technical feasibility, it's yes, we can grab some Arduino, some ultrasonic sensors, and probably have something which makes sound, but does it really improve the well-being of the people in that building? If we have an ambient persuasive system which is there in order to try to bring people to use less electricity, how do we measure that actually less electricity is used over time? So there are some kind of development process problems as well, and these are all these parts can be discussed in this course, and of course it's very interesting for me always to see what are the things you're really interested in. So we will have to talk a little bit about cognitive foundations, not as much as, for example, in the visualization course, but a little bit will be here as well. We will probably talk a bit about semiotic foundations. We talk about traditional straightforward context models, which basically look at different sensible parameters. We can see how these parameters which we can sense can come together in a working model of context, which then can be reasoned about by traditional reasoning methods, for example. As I said, we will be looking at challenges for the development of systems, and we hopefully will be able to develop a very abstract overall architecture which helps us to understand the challenges, because when we have an overall architecture, then we can identify different aspects where we need to do specific things to actually make our approach work. Basically, so just a very short on the kind of origins of this way of thinking. Mark Weiser in 1991 wrote his seminal paper, The Computer for the 21st Century, where he said the most profound technologies are those that disappear. They weave themselves into the fabric of everyday life until they are indistinguishable from it. And I really like this way of thinking here, weaving themselves into the fabric of everyday life until they are indistinguishable from it. They disappear, really. If your phone gets low on battery, you just look for the next charging port and plug your charger in and charge your phone. That's all. That's a very deliberate act of working with electricity, but electricity in a more general sense is just there, right? It's getting dark, so you flip a switch and the lights come on. You don't think about unless it breaks down, unless your system doesn't work, unless you don't get light, you don't think about that there are wires around you in your living room, you don't think about light bulbs and stuff like that. Electricity is something you can access and which is there all the time, and that's the idea of computing. Mark Weiser was also looking at some technologies which are just there, which react to what you are doing, which make it possible for you to for example, take down notes or exchange notes with other people. And this whole architecture of computing is there. And he did it in a very practical way. So in his paper of 1993, Some Computer Science Issues in Ubiquitous Computing, he talked about his work here. He called it phase 1 of ubiquitous computing, to construct, deploy, and learn from a computing environment consisting of tabs, pads, and boards. So he was working with computers of different sizes, basically akin to a smartphone we have today, or which would be a personal item you would take with you, or tabs, or pads, which are basically there and can be used to in a room, and can be used to when you have need for a bit larger devices. So it's no coincidence that the iPad is called the iPad. And you have boards, displays, room-sized displays like the one you see here on screen, where people are working on. And he said this is only phase 1 because this is unlikely to achieve optimal invisibility. We still have a specific artifact. We have a phone to work with. We have a screen to work with. And he wanted to go further than that. He wanted really to become more like electricity. So information technology which makes it possible for you to interact with the environment, interact with information, should be ubiquitous, should not be thought of as specific technical artifacts. And he readily admitted this is only phase 1 because it is unlikely to achieve optimal invisibility. And it is kind of kind of sad actually that we are we are actually in this kind of stage. We are still in phase 1. We're still using things like smartphones. We still don't really have. We sometimes have smart, so-called smart whiteboards, smart boards at universities or in schools, but they are not really smart, are they? So I have to explicitly call a specific program. I cannot just stand in front of a public screen and just flip pictures from my phone to that screen in order to share with other people. So this interaction is cross-device interaction, using different devices to interact with each other, is still not there. Unfortunately, Visa did not really specify what phase 2 would look like, but on the other hand, well, maybe we can finally start building it. I'm just skipping this slide because we will come back to that later. Anyways, that's the first definition of connecting contextualized computing and ambient intelligence systems, and I basically have done well. I'm talking about, as I say, I'm skipping it, but I'm not skipping it obviously because I'm talking about maybe one thing I want to draw your attention to is the first look at a general architecture here. So what is really needed if we work with context. Context from a computational perspective has these two aspects of we are as well, of we are constructing a context, and a context is construing, is limiting, favoring things we can do in that context, right? So as I said, you don't expect me to start singing Klingon opera arias, because that would be inappropriate. It would be more appropriate to talk about the definition of context, and that's what we call context sensitivity, so that we are acting in a way which is according to that context. But in order to be able to do so, of course, we have to first figure out which context we are in. I am now not on a event where Klingon operas are being sung usually. I am in a lecture. And that's what we call context awareness, being aware of the environment, being aware that this is not the right time to do Klingon operas. But in order to do so, we also have, that's a context part, but in order to do that in an ambient way, we also need to first perceive the environment, get enough clues about what does it look like. It looks like a lecture theater. It looks like you are all facing me, and so on. And we need some action. We need to have a room which configures itself to a lecture, which configures itself to the group meeting, etc. So these are it's basically the first glimpse of a general overall architecture perception. The initial act of perceiving the world, the system inhibits then context awareness, being aware of the environment and reasoning about ongoing situations, and context sensitivity, exhibit appropriate behavior in ongoing situations, and then finally acting upon the world, changing the environment according to context. Okay, so that's more or less enough content for today. I'll just switch paces and go which tools are we going to use for the course of the course. Obviously there's LearnWeb, and LearnWeb new materials, required readings, etc. will be made available, and if there are videos, they will be linked to from LearnWeb. We'll see how many videos we actually have and how much we do in some more interactive fashion and a more seminaristic way. We are using Big Blue Button for our interaction as we do right now. So the course office hours will be in Big Blue Button, and videos will be made available on YouTube. And they will also be linked to from the LearnWeb. So I'm just using YouTube as a big content delivery platform. But you can watch the videos there. Of course, you can watch them without being logged into YouTube and stuff like that. So that's basically my big CDN here, and you will find all the lecture videos for this term and the last term on YouTube as well. We might have to use things if we want to exchange stuff which is a bit too large for LearnWeb. I don't envision us to have to do that, but one of the other required things, we will be using Academic Cloud for that kind of things. So for example, if you want to deliver your work in the end and you have included, for what reason, whatever reason, you have included a huge video file you can't upload to LearnWeb, then you could use Academic Cloud, for example. And not so much valid for this course, but if it's going about code and so on, we could be using GitLab. Now, these first three are basically what we will be using. GitLab is probably not used here as much. We could, if you are interested in that kind of things, we could have a chat for that for this course. LearnWeb has an inbuilt. Moodle has a plugin for chats, but that's working rather badly in my experience. I don't really envision us to the need for having a chat like that. But if you think otherwise, then that's also an option. The GWDG, the Gesellschaft für wissenschaftliche Datenverarbeitung in Göttingen, has this chat program, Rocket Chat, which we can use, for example. If we have to decide on times, there's something like Foodle, which is or basically the Deutsches Forschungsnetz. They offer scheduling software, and we can use for that. These are just tips here to which are just running through here more or less quickly, so that that you are already aware of these kind of tools. And for the whole duration of the term, I have opened a meeting space at Gather, gather.town. The idea behind Gather is that you have this kind of 8-bit optics computer game play areas where you get your own avatars, which the avatars you can move around in Gather, and if you are close to other people in that same space, you will see their video feeds, they will see your video feeds, and you will hear your microphone, your audio input, and vice versa. So I have a meeting space which is linked to from LearnWeb. You can use that all the time. There's a password which is also mentioned in LearnWeb, so you can log into there. You can do it in order to, for example, in more or less informally meet other people. For example, if you decide to work on media informatics issues on this course or on other courses at specific times, you could just schedule with your peers, with friends that you meet there at specific times, so that you basically if you're forced to actually work on something instead of going to the kitchen and make yourself some food or whatever. Or you can use that as a way to discuss things where you don't want me to be a part of in the beginning, because you want to talk about the course or problems about the course. I mean, I will be there from time to time to see what's going on, but this is a space, or we could also schedule to meet there in groups, for example. This is I think it's a nice concept, because it is a way of translating some kind of this. We have groups in a room, and these groups work with each other, within each other, saving this kind of context into in a virtual environment. It's a very interesting idea. And of course, if there's other stuff you want us to use, I try to limit the amount of new tools you have to relate to and work with what we already have. So I just very briefly go through the literature, and I just want to assure you that I don't expect you to actually read or even buy all these books. It's just a way of showing that there is a certain breadth in the topics we are trying to cover. So the first books by John Crum that's a collection of papers from influential researchers in the field of ubiquitous computing. Mark Langheinrich is talking about privacy issues, for example. Alan Day is talking about context as a concept. So that's Aaron Quigley is talking about user interface issues. So that's an interesting book in the sense that we actually have a collection by very influential authors. If you want to go for a more traditional textbook, then maybe this is the right one by Stefan Poslet, Ubiquitous Computing, Smart Devices, Environments and Interactions. It goes through a lot of issues from sensor technology to different user interface metaphors. Keep in mind that both these books, 2010, 2019, as are others which are mentioned, are a bit older. So if we will be more relying on papers for more up-to-date content. Ubiquitous computing, ambient computing is a very transdisciplinary issue. I talked about culture before, I've talked about arts before, and you see this reflected in this book by Ulrich Ekman and others on ubiquitous computing, complexity and culture, which has a very different perspective on what you would probably expect from a text from a book on this kind of application. It's also already kind of visible when you look at the publisher. This book is published by Routledge, and Routledge is actually more known for books in linguistics, for example. So it's a different publisher than the usual Springer and Wiley you probably see in most computer science courses. It is kind of an interesting perspective on the field, and it talks about things like media arts and also interaction design, but more from a really design perspective and not only from a user interaction problem perspective. Paul Dorish and Genevieve Bell have published a book which they call Divining a Digital Future, the first book which is not called Ubiquitous Computing +++. And that's a very interesting book. Paul has Paul's view on context is very influential, is very interesting, and that's actually an article by co-authored by him. We will we will look at in the course as well. And it's also kind of with together Paul Dorish and Genevieve Bell, they are looking at different perspectives. They take different disciplinary stances, so that's also an interesting perspective on the field. More towards classical user experience things. There is a kind of a textbook by Mike Guniewski, which again from 2010, but a lot of the interaction problems are actually still the same, about how do we actually interact with these different smart things, as he calls it. More classical approach to human-computer interaction you see in this collection of papers called Human-Centric Interfaces for Ambient Intelligence by Hamid Ahayan, Juan Carlos Augusto, Ramon Lopez Cruzar, Delgado, which is it's a collection of different papers for human-centered development, human-centered perspective on ambient intelligence. If you're more interested in hardware and software issues, there is a book by Manish Gajar, Sensors and Hardware. Now the problem with these kind of books is that they become outdated very quickly, right? Because the technology becomes outdated very quickly. So I'm kind of reluctant to go into much detail into actually how to implement things in specific hardware, because whatever we teach you here at university or whatever we do here at university that will not last your whole work life, right? So the technologies we talk about will be, in particular in this kind of fields like ambient intelligence, they will be outdated very quickly. I mean, why things like Amazon's Echo Dots or the Google Assistants are not, which can be part of the smart environment, are only part of our smart environments for a comparatively short time. So while we can look at specific issues, I don't want to dive too much into these kind of implementation details, because I don't think it will really help you developing the necessary skills to adopt to this changing environments. I think it's more interesting to come out of a university course and being able to read stuff on and put stuff on perspective on specific programming paradigms, on specific sensor technologies, and to really work with specific sensor technologies, because the latter skill in the short run might look more helpful, but will not help you in the long run or the medium run. Last, we see Juan Carlos and Hamid again. The Handbook of Ambient Intelligence and Smart Environments is a kind of comprehensive way, and that's basically coming back to John Crumb's book we talked about in the beginning. It's a similar aspect, but in a way in even more detail, and having, of course, also a kind of different perspective from time to time. Now, as I said, I don't expect you to read all these books and buy all these books and whatever the content, the handouts, the slides, the papers I make available during LearnWeb should be enough to bring you through the course and have some interesting discussions. But this is more like to show you the different perspectives we can have in the field, and from time to time I will grab specific aspects maybe of one book or the other in order to use it here in the course. Okay, so that's basically for the topics, for the tools, for the literature, which sets the field. Now the final remarks I want to actually do. We have been dealing with the coronavirus situation for a while, and things have been changing both for the better and maybe for the worse. When we started this whole online remote teaching endeavor in March a year ago, this is what Randall Munro's view of the world was, as expressed through XKCD. So dealing with the various, and now he has a much more if you look at the Randall's XKCD comics regarding the coronavirus crisis over time, you see different perspective he takes as well, conceptual changes over time, and now he's drawing comics about humans getting revenge on the virus because we get hopefully we'll get vaccinated. And be able to actually deal with the virus in a way. So the perspective has obviously changed, but problems are still there, right? So we were thrown into the situation in March last year, and some things have improved, some things have not improved, and some things are still the same. Long video lectures are boring. That's just we are not, we who do this kind of videos now. We didn't choose it. We didn't become YouTubers. We are not. I'm not Matthias Berling. I'm not Sula El-Waili. I don't engage in the same way. I'm not even an essayist like Maggie Mae Fish or Matt Parker, who sits in a more essayistic style through a topic and a video, and usually Matt Parker doesn't do that long videos either. Maggie Mae might have longer videos, but lots of B-roll then. So long lecture videos are still boring. It doesn't matter how long we have been doing this. It doesn't matter that we are in the third online term now. Video conferences with lots of people are very limited use. We get there is scientific evidence that we get tired more quickly if we do online meetings. That they are not as efficient. There is actually some cognitive issues involved if I am in a large in a video conference. The people are all at the faces are at the same physical distance, so my eyes actually focus always on the plane of the monitor, whereas in a real meeting situations I would be moving much more around. People would be in different distances and so on. So there's a lot of cognitive basic problems with video conferences, which makes them tiring, which makes them difficult to deal with. Access to computers, access to the internet can still be spotty. The people drop. If I have meetings with students, they sometimes drop out because there are some problems. Now that I'm working from home, I actually realized that I don't have really 24/7 access to the internet, because sometimes there's just network problems which last for a while, which usually is much less prominent in infrastructures as we have at university. Apropos university, access to resources, libraries and so on is still limited. Your personal situation can be suboptimal. You might be in a Wohngemeinschaft and have very little space for yourself, and your workspace is actually the same space where you sleep and so on. Some people say we have more freedom to organize our time, so that's good. Some people say we have there's less time spent commuting, there's less energy spent commuting, in very different senses of the word. But of course, the Peter Parker principle applies. With great powers comes great responsibility, and it's not always easy to organize your work environment, and it still has to be said that this is just a normal. I just the other day spoke with a staff member admin staff member at university who came out of parental leave and said, I just came back and my colleague said, stuff will take so much more time and than you're used to, and she said, I didn't realize that this was really true. So people are less productive. I am much less productive than I usually am. Not that I'm very productive else, but and I'm used to at least partially working from home. I've done home office before, but not as extensive as during the last year. So there's some things we have to keep in mind. We cannot do this course the same way we would do in a face-to-face meeting. We still need. We are even in the third term of distance teaching. We are still not settled. We still need new forms of teaching and learning. My experience from teaching comes from face-to-face teaching. I didn't really engage in distance teaching before, and all these competencies, these ways of dealing with the context of teaching, looking for cues in interaction with students, does not work in online. And even if we do it for the third term, we cannot quickly change to that. And I'm sure many of you will still be missing that kind of interaction. Actually, we do like to. I mean, sometimes it might not look that way, but we really enjoy working together with you and interacting with you. So things have been improving. Hopefully, my first online term was a total disaster. That things did not work. In particular, the lectures did not work out at all. The lab course was okay, but I have to admit that I did not cope at all with the lecture part. I think last term was a little bit better, and hopefully we will get better this again. But it's still difficult, and we have to just be aware we will achieve less in more time, but that's okay. So it is a different situation. We do learn. There are different activities, relations which we can look at when we talk about learning. There is communication, consummation, and production. Consummation is things like we want to initiate and meetings, participate in meetings. We have lectures, tutorials, office hours, etc. And part of this can still be done like office hours and group meetings. Consummation will definitely change. We have now videos, like you asked before. Will this video be made available? Yes, it will be, and you can re-watch the lectures, which is not something we can usually do, but of course we miss the interacting part much more. The production part of learning will also change. Will be less about group works, assignments. It will be much more about different ways of teaching. Another aspect I want to highlight is we should not forget that we are different, and this switch to online remote learning rather, as it's not really a fully fledged online education we do, but more like haphazard remote learning can be particularly challenging for example, neurodiverse people. You might have obstacles to focus if you are diagnosed with ADD, ADHD. If you might have problems with coping with written text. If you have dyslexia and missing the spoken interaction. It can also have this kind of teaching can also have advantages for people with neurodiverse people, but most research I'm aware of shows that it comes with lots of problems. If you are hearing impaired, you might have difficulties engaging with audio elements. If you are visually impaired, you might have difficulties interacting with visual elements. The language might be difficult. All these things we are aware of, but if you feel that you need more support, then you should contact us, because we acknowledge that there is people are coping differently, and we have to take care to make sure that this does not affect their learning experience, or the effect on the learning experience is as little as possible. And let's not forget, we are not in home offices. We are working from home in a crisis, and even if you stop manically refreshing Twitter or refreshing risk layer every couple of minutes, that's still something in the ongoing situation, and the discussion is in the back of our minds, and this is not a normal home office situation. That's I cannot, as I pointed out before, I am because of my personal situation, and because of how I do things, I am used to work from home for 1 to 3 days per week, 2 days per week, maybe on average. But this is usually positive. I can focus on things which is harder to focus on at university. I usually do course slides, lecture slides. I don't do it at uni. I do in other settings. But this does not translate to a full work from home situation in a pandemic. That's just the way it is. And if you have problems, please take into account the different services you might be able to use. The Studentenwerk has their own services on offer. The Sozialberatung is still going on, for example. You can talk to your teachers, you can talk to your peers. There is an offer from the basically frontlined by the Deutsche Gesellschaft für Psychologie und dem Verbund universitärer Ausbildungsgänge für Psychotherapie, psychologische Corona-Hilfe. That's actually another offer. You can also find the links from the Studentenwerk as well. So please take care of yourself, not only washing your hands and keeping your face mask on when required, but also take care of your mental health. That's a very important aspect as well. Okay, that's basically what I had for you today. More material will be made available in the second week of term. And we will also have a course office hour again on Wednesday, as usual for the full term time, Wednesdays at 10 o'clock. Thank you for your attention. Stay safe and take care.